Surprisingly, this is one of those stories that I forgot about until just a few days ago. When I was talking to a school friend on a call, I got reminded of this. She was pretty freaked when I told her, and so was I, just thinking about it again. This happened when I was roughly maybe 7 or 8, so some of the details may be a bit fuzzy, but I remember it still pretty vividly. This may seem like unimportant context, but my family had just moved to America and we were renting the top portion of your regular suburban house in a pretty safe cul-de-sac. I had friends, they were triplets, about 3 or 4 houses down, not far at all. Every day I'd go hang out with them, and around 9 or 10 at night, my older brother, who was around 11 or 12 probably, would make the 2-minute walk to come get me and then walk me home since I was pretty young. One night, he came to get me as usual. The sun wasn't fully down yet, but it was still getting pretty dark. We started down the walk as normal when he started casting glances over his shoulder. I didn't really notice until he shoved me hard away from the sidewalk and between 2 houses. Each house had a huge fence that separated their backyard. Not ours though, and he made me crouch behind the fence. I remember being really scared, but more so confused since I had no damn idea what the hell was going on. More specifically, he was a pretty big prankster. Once, he convinced me that my older sister crashed her car into the ocean. So I didn't really believe him when he turned and said, "Walk behind the houses. I think someone's following us." Looking back now, he was probably just trying to keep me calm. However, whatever calm was left in my tiny 8-year-old body was gone the moment that I turned around and looked. The man had followed us behind the houses, and he was just by the edge of a few houses down near a different fence line. He had a black hoodie on, with his hood up, black sweatpants, and white sneakers. I have pretty bad eyesight now due to some health problems, but back then, they were crystal clear, and I could see with horrifying clarity that his jaw was hung open. He was just standing there with his jaw wide hung open. It was horrifying. I think now that I'm older, maybe he had some kind of medical condition that affected his jaw, or maybe he just did crack. I don't know. But back then, I could have sworn on God that I was seeing some kind of demon. My brother, when he saw me looking and getting ready to freak out, told me to just run as fast as I can to our house. We booked it. Neither one of us looked back, but we were scared out of our minds. Like I said, we only rented the top portion of the house, so the bottom, with the sliding door in the backyard, belonged to some other tenant. I don't remember if she was home or not, but I remember tugging that thing open and locking it as fast as I can. And when I looked up, he was there, in the yard, just a few feet away from the door, staring at us. My brother and I told my sister and my mother immediately. My father was away on a work trip, but nothing came of it. Not until the other day. We went to go meet my dad at his warehouse, which had a small live-in portion above it where we lazed around until he was ready to head home with us. Around dusk, he came up and told us that we might have to wait since the police were here. He walked us around to the back window of the small area to show us the police that were all around the backyard area of the warehouses that seemed to be pointed at a white van parked on the grass by the edge of the woods. Like I said, I was pretty young, so I don't remember many details of what actually happened, but I do remember my dad, who hadn't been told about the day prior, mind you, telling us that they found a man and a woman in the van. The man, he said, had his mouth hung wide open. He seemed really disturbed telling me about the whole thing and wouldn't answer any more questions about the woman. Maybe she was dead. I've got zero idea. I do know that he was arrested on trespassing charges. I don't know anything else, and I haven't asked about it, and I doubt he'd even remember. Besides, it's been over a decade and he's pushing 70, but it still freaks me out to this day. I can't believe that it even happened, and I don't have any answers for it. I talked to my brother briefly about it in hopes that he'd remember more than I do, but all I got was a long tirade about whatever medical condition the guy probably had for his mouth to be hung open like that. Which is annoying, but admittedly, my brother's a medical student now. Sometimes, I think maybe he didn't mean any harm and he was just drugged out of his mind. But this was like in the world's safest neighborhood, and it doesn't explain why or how he showed up at my dad's workplace. This person includes an edit that says, "If anyone is curious, I did ask around for a little more information. I wasn't able to find a lot, but I found out why my father moved away from that warehouse. The police found a dead body in a car close by. I'm not sure if this is the same van or not from what happened, but take that as you will." I'm a 19-year-old female living in the Pacific Northwest. A couple of months ago, I was looking for extra work because my hours at my regular job were shit. I'm quiet, anxious, and I don't have any friends, so I turned to Craigslist. I knew the site could be sketchy, but I was desperate for side gigs, and I hadn't had any luck as someone with no skills and who wasn't willing to do sex work. One ad caught my attention though. It offered $50 for someone to come take photos of a property using either a camera or something above an iPhone 12. I have an iPhone 14, promising that it would only take an hour or two. I emailed the poster and soon got a text back. The man said that I seemed like the perfect fit and invited me over the same day. What's funny is I actually made a post on r/tooafraid-to-ask about if it was a dumb idea or not, which everyone told me to take a person with me. I didn't, and I deleted the post shortly after. The house was about 20 minutes outside of town, surrounded by dense forest. It was small and run down, but nothing that raised any alarms. The man who greeted me looked like he was in his 50s, pretty unremarkable. He invited me inside. The house was completely empty, no furniture, just dust and dirt. I asked where to start taking photos, but he was dodging the question, making small talk and asking personal questions about me instead. My anxiety was building, so I kept the small talk going, but then he began staring at me intensely. I dropped my phone at one point when we eventually started taking photos through the house, and when he picked it up, he held on to it a little too long before giving it back. Unprompted, when taking photos of the master bedroom, he brushed my face with his hand and complimented my skin. I knew it was stupid coming here, but at that point, my blood truly ran cold and I was done making excuses in my head. I made a quick excuse to leave, saying something about my mom when I turned toward the door. And that's when he grabbed my arm. I still have the picture that I took after the ordeal of the bruises on my forearm. It felt like it was gonna get snapped in half. I had brought a small knife for self-defense, a gift from my paranoid mom who would never let me come here if she had known. Without thinking, I pulled it out and I stabbed him in the arm. It was released with the push of a small button. He let go, swinging at my arm with the knife, but I was already running out of the house. I got into my car and I drove until I was at the gas station and my heart was calm. I called the police and I explained everything. They took it seriously and I came in to make a report and to answer some questions. They searched the property and the surrounding forest, but they could never find him. The house turned out to be abandoned, and in the basement, they found a pack of zip ties. A report was made, but he's still out there. I call sometimes for updates, but it's never anything of any substance. I've never told anyone about this other than the police, not even my mom. I know typing this, I sound pretty unbothered, but that's the first time anything like that has ever happened to me, and I have trouble leaving my house most days. I decided to type this out on here as maybe a way of getting it off my chest, as it continues to plague my thoughts constantly. I'm very much into LARPing, and for those who don't know what that is, we basically spend the weekend in the woods dressed as medieval fantasy characters and interact with each other. Live action roleplay. I go to these events with my friend and my partner, and we meet some more friends when we're there. There are all types of people at these events, but 99.9% are absolute angels. I had yet to meet the 0.1%, but I wish I hadn't. Before the event started, a guy, we'll call him Greg, swung by my tent while I was setting it up. My partner and friend were setting up the secondary tent up a path and couldn't see me. There were 5 other people to my right. I'd never met the guy before, but as soon as he said hi, I had a bad feeling. He was around 5'10", obese, a neckbeard. Basically, what would fit the description of an incel. He approaches me and asks me if I'm here alone. I say no, and that I'm here with people, but I don't mention my partner or my friend directly. He asks me if I'm a gamer, to which I say yes, and from then on, he starts rambling on about Ark Survival, which is a game that I personally have 3,000 plus hours on. He tells me blatantly wrong information, misnames the dinos, and tells me stuff that's impossible to do in the game, even with mods. And every time I correct him, I can see he looks to be getting even more annoyed. I end the conversation, saying I have to go back to setting up the tent, and he leaves. Fast forward to around 10 or 11 p.m., and the event has started, which means any mention of the real world, like cars or TV or pop culture, is forbidden by a rule called decorum. We're playing a campfire game with my friends and my partner, and the guy comes by to sit with us. He sits next to me, and I move over. He scoots closer, and I move over even more. Again, he scoots. Eventually, I get up and sit next to my friend. As we play the game, he keeps referring to the real world and to video games, so we tell him either to leave or to make an effort and speak properly, following decorum. He leaves. The next day, I go up trail for fake hunting, which is really just gathering resources. As I come back down towards the village, in the middle of the woods with no camps I can hide in, he's there, waiting for me on the trail. He then asks me if I would like to go get a coffee or something sometime, to which I reply, no thanks. As we go down the trail, I tell him I have to collect plants for my potions, so if he can excuse me, I'll be going back to the village to leave my bow and collect my basket. I'm walking fast. He follows me, grabs my arm, and he tells me, I could come with you. You, me, alone in the woods looking for plants? That sounds like the perfect scenario to me. I freak out, and I walk very fast down the trail to the village. My neighbors see me and they look very concerned. They ask if I need help, and I tell them, in an honesty, which is a code to say take me seriously, this isn't part of the game, that this dude is being extra creepy and following me around. They take their weapons, which are all handmade out of foam, and they tell him to f*** off before they carve him a new asshole. I stay with them for a few minutes before chilling with my friends. Night comes. We're having fun. Stuff is happening in terms of fighting and encounters. Then at around midnight, I decide to go to the bathroom. At that point, I haven't seen this guy since around 7 p.m. As I come back from the bathroom, in complete darkness, this guy jumps from a bush and pins me against a tree. He tells me that he's not proud of me, and that I've been leading him on, and that he doesn't understand why I would hold another guy's hand and hug 3 other guys, but not him. I tell him I hold my fiance's hand all the time, and I do hug my friends, but he's neither. I also tell him to stop this BS, in all honesty. To which he replies, "But what if, in all honesty, I just want a little kiss, huh? Just a little kiss and then you can go." I shout no. I try to hit him and then he gets away. My friends, who are right on the other side of the bridge separating us, heard me scream. They took their weapons, called upon my neighbors, and around 10 people came careening down the bridge to help. The guy let me go and turned to my rescuers, saying he was just interrogating me for information concerning the demons, which in the game were our foes. My friends, who have seen the guy be an asshole before, tell him not to move, and that they're going to get the owner of the LARP to deal with him. He tried to dissuade them, but my neighbors tell him to sit down or he'll be visiting Death's altar before he can move. I'm taken away by my fiancé, who's very worried and concerned about what happened. The owner arrives and I explain what happened, and he takes Greg outside of the play to discuss. From what I heard, he was kindly asked not to come back to future events. Heyo Greg, my medieval stalker, let's not meet again.